Hey everyone, I'm Rebecca Martinez and today we're going to make some vegan strawberry filled donuts. To start the recipe, we're going to get our stand mixer and add our dry ingredients to the bowl of that stand mixer. Add 350 grams of all-purpose flour. This recipe will be a blend of all-purpose flour and bread flour because we want the texture of the donut to be firm but also have some lightness to it. And to fill it out, add 150 grams of bread flour. You can buy this at Whole Foods or online. I feel like most conventional food stores don't always carry bread flour. Give it a little whisk in your KitchenAid or stand mixer or even by hand, and we're going to add our wet ingredients. Add 40 grams of sourdough starter or discard, or about 20 grams of plant milk if you don't want to add the sourdough starter or discard, in addition to a 1/4 cup of melted coconut butter or coconut oil. I always choose butter because coconut butter has more nutrients than coconut oil. Add a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar or less. You could do 2 tablespoons of 1/4 cup, whatever you feel like you want. And then add your oat milk. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg to really get that donut flavor. I don't know why, but donuts definitely taste much better with fresh grated nutmeg, so I highly recommend getting the fresh stuff. And to leaven the dough, we're going to add 7 grams of SAF instant yeast. This stuff lasts forever. It's the best deal you can get in the market. I buy my stuff on Amazon. And then add 5 grams of salt to give the dough just a little bit of flavor. Mix it in the stand mixer for about 5 to 10 minutes until the dough starts to get tacky and it forms a decent amount of gluten. The dough will be soft though to touch. It'll stick a little bit, but you can knead this by hand if you want to, or like I did, just add a couple lift and fold, stretch and folds right before you let the dough rest and rise. The dough can rest overnight, or you can let it prove at room temperature for about 1.5 hours like conventional dough. I chose to let mine chill in the refrigerator overnight, but it really makes no difference. Now to shape the dough, once you have your prepared space, add a little flour to the bottom of it, and we're going to get some parchment paper because the best way to roll out donuts is using 2 different sheets of parchment paper, one at the bottom and one at the top, because donut dough is relatively sticky. Even the donut doughs for old-fashioned donuts and yeast risen donuts are pretty tacky because they do have a bit of oil or butter and sugar, and they are pretty wet. So get your parchment paper down and generously give it a flour as well, and put your dough onto that parchment paper. Punch it down with your hand to get out all the air, and then get your rolling pin of choice, also generously floured, and also generously flour the top of the dough and roll it out to a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch thick. So you can definitely see that the dough will rise, but I feel like if you roll out donuts too thin, they're just not good. So I sometimes go thicker rather than thinner. That is my recommendation for you all. You'll just have to keep an eye on the frying because the thicker they are, the little longer you'll have to fry each one on each side. Now take a biscuit cutter, and on the largest setting, I recommend the largest setting, punch out individual donut holes until you've pretty much covered the entirety of your rolled out dough. Now, because I'm a lady that tries to do no waste, I eventually re-rolled all of the dough that I used and made it into some ugly but still delicious donuts. I I recommend doing this simply because you're not going to throw out a lot of dough, and as you can tell, when you take out those donut holes that you've pre-punched, a lot of dough is left over. But for those that we cut out, you're going to just cover them with a tray and let them rest for about an hour until you can tell that they've risen. I just take my fingers and mold the individual pieces of dough into the dough cutter so they fit that shape, and they're all kind of generously the same size as the original dough. These will just be not as pretty. So that's okay though, because you're going to be using all of your dough and you're not going to have to throw out anything. And for the fry, for the donuts that you fry, I chose to bake them as well, as you'll see in a second. Fry them at 360 to 365 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 to 5 minutes on each side until they're really nice and golden brown. You don't want to under fry these because then the middle will be raw, and then when you add your jelly filling to the middle of it, it just won't be edible, quite honestly. It'll be a weird, very weird texture. So make sure that you leave them a little longer than you anticipate until they're really nice and golden brown, especially if you choose to do a thicker donut. For the baked donuts, I added them to an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 to 18 minutes. Now the filling. I used the exact jelly I published last week on my channel, so it's the strawberry filled jelly, the strawberry jelly that's sweetened with dates. And it's really good inside of these donuts. I recommend it. It's less sugar than ordinary donuts, and you get a lot of the fruit that we all want to consume because it's super nutritious. So once you've fried all of your donuts and you've let them chill for about 10 to 15 minutes, let them cool a little bit, you're going to take a knife or a chopstick and poke individual holes in each donut, making room for the jelly for when you insert it. I use this interesting little tool that I found in this baking supply packet that I bought years ago, that it was like an injector, but please feel free to use a piping bag. I almost wish I had two, because a piping bag allows you to insert more filling much quicker, and it allows you to, store a lot more in that bag as opposed to in this little piper. So continue to do this to all of your donuts and then fill them until they're pretty full. You want them to be slightly oozing out of that hole, but not completely spewing out. So do this to each of your donuts, including the baked donuts. You're going to treat them all the same. And then when you've finished with that, and then add some powdered sugar on the top. Make sure that your donuts are not hot, because if they are, the powdered sugar will basically disintegrate into the dough. So grab a nice sieve and then add a little bit of powdered sugar on there and powder your donuts. They almost look like the Polish donut, the paczki. I hopefully am not butchering that name, but they're really warm and delightful. They're a really nice midday treat, and I really enjoyed them. And let me know in the comments what other kinds of baked goods you'd like to see me make for you all that are healthier, but also kind of fun and delicious. See you next week.